Hello everyone, and welcome to this audio podcast. This audio podcast is part of the Amuscade, the Muscade and Smash Up. And this audio podcast is part of an interlude. This audio podcast is part of an interlude, and this audio podcast is part of a Storm Robotics production. So, listeners and viewers in on Storm Robotics, Storm Robotics audio podcast, will hopefully know that there have been some audio podcasts in around looking at elements of Crouzons, Crouzon syndrome, and at some point there will be a basis in around a sort of a series, audio podcast series that we'll look into Crouzons. But in this audio podcast, a little bit some bases in around looking at Crouzon, and in particularly in around a particular receptor. A receptor referred to as the fibroblast growth factor, or FGF, and so the when in as part of this interlude, a little bit in around the fibroblast growth factor receptor, or FGFR signaling pathways. So the transmembrane tyrosine kinase receptor, which is encoded, but also sort of interlinked with FGFR2, fibroblast growth factor receptor 2, which facilitates and also encourages elements of osteogenesis by means of FGF signaling. So in order to control osteoblast proliferation and differentiation, activation sets of sort of a downstream of pathways referred to signaling, additional sort of signaling pathways referred to as MAPK and ERK and PI3K and AKT pathways. In order to prompt or promote early osteoblastic development and ossification at the sutural locations, that being in the cranial, and then where the cranium around the cranium, wherein Crouzon recipients have or can have a basis in around aspects of ossification, and in where there is wherein on the cranium there is the sutural locations. Mutations intensify the receptor signaling. So due to the compensatory expansion of at the patent sutures, i.e., for example, wherein the cranium or in around the cranium of Crouzons, in Crouzons, where sort of the centric point of where the sutural locations sort of interlink. It is at due to the sort of expansion of the patent sutures, which results in asymmetrical skull morphologies and midfacial retrusion, and this aberrant ossification also interferes with cranial morphopathogenesis or morphogenesis. A dysmorphic cranial development is then further exacerbated by the disruption of Dura-Satura signaling feedback loops. Animal investigation in context of laboratory research. Laboratory research is where the conditional FGFR2 factor growth factor or receptor 2 activation sort of mirrors the mirrors the Crouzons syndrome characteristics, including early suture fashion and abnormal cranial base angles and maxillary hypoplasia. These models or animal investigation context of laboratory investigation as part of laboratory investigations emphasize or give the basis the possibility of targeted regulation and the part of aberrant fibroblast growth factor gradients which play the spatial patterning of osteogenesis. So that draws this audio podcast to a close. This audio podcast as part of the Amuscade, and this audio podcast as part of the Amuscade and Smash Up. This audio podcast as part of an interlude, and this audio podcast as part of a Storm Robotics production.